What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Kakis, and today, or I should say this week, Bungie revealed that they're going to be changing 26 different exotic weapons through buffs, nerfs, or reworks in a future update, I think with the launch of Season 19. And this is super exciting. That is a ton of different weapons affected, and we're going to see a massive meta shakeup because of this. But what weapons are being affected? Well, they haven't revealed it quite yet. However, a lot of these changes are likely to be buffs, and if Bungie has any sense at all, they're going to be looking at weapons that are seeing no play. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Take a look at the 10 least used exotic weapons in all of Destiny 2 for PvE, and these are the weapons extremely likely to be part of those 26 weapons getting changes with that future update. So let's get things started here with number 10. So this is the most used of the entire list. Is the Salvation's Grip exotic grenade launcher, coming in at 0.0134%. The next number is the percent of kills, and the last number is the percent of headshots, which is literally 0. And that's because of how this exotic functions. So this was actually our first look at a stasis weapon ever with the launch of Beyond Light. So this weapon actually just shoots stasis crystals, as you can see in the background gameplay. And overall, for a dedicated stasis crystal build, it can be a useful piece of tech. Not to mention that you can actually jump on these crystals, and the Salvation's Grip can help you get into some pretty sus areas that you're not supposed to be by literally making your own platforms to get there. But aside from those incredibly niche scenarios, it's just not good enough, especially when you consider that this is a heavy grenade launcher. Honestly, Bungie could make this a special weapon, and I think it'd probably be pretty balanced, because as a heavy, what is the point of freezing everything and then blowing it up and killing them, when you can just use the Gjallarhorn instead and kill them with a single shot in the first place, you know? However, it's time to move on from there to the 9th weapon on our list, and that's gonna go to the Edge of Intent exotic glaive. Now, there are 3 different exotic glaives, one for each different class, and this is the Warlock one, coming in at 0.0131%. And guys, I'm gonna be honest here, it's so bad I don't even have it. Like, I didn't even bother to grind Wellspring to get it. I'm just using the Titan version in the background gameplay, but that should really tell you everything you need to know. The Edge of Intent, the actual version, is going to shoot down a little healing turret that will shoot you and nearby allies and heal you, and that sounds great, but the biggest problem with all 3 of these weapons, because all of them have bad usage rates, this just happens to be the worst of the 3, is that you have to build up your glaive energy by shooting enemies, and then only when it's 100% full can you use the special ability. But here's the thing, blocking takes away from your glaive energy reserve. And guys, blocking is like the best darn part about glaives in PvE. It's going to absorb 97% of incoming damage. In fact, I think it's getting a recent nerf because it's so powerful. So you want to be blocking as much as possible, but if you're doing that, then you're not going to have the energy that you need to do these special abilities of these glaives, and if you're not doing their special abilities, the only thing that makes them exotic, why are you wasting an exotic slot on these, right? And that is the problem with all 3. Again, the Edge of Intent just being the least impactful one of the 3. Bungie, just let us use their unique abilities no matter how much energy we have, and then vary the power of, the healing turret based on how much energy we put into it, right? Anyways, moving on from there, the next weapon on our list is the Wavesplitter exotic trace rifle with 0.0124% usage. So this is the worst performing trace rifle in the entire game in terms of usage rate, which is kind of crazy to even see it in this bottom 10 because Bungie actually buffed trace rifles recently. They're hitting pretty darn hard, especially against PvE enemies, harder than frankly ever before. So why is the Wavesplitter down here? Well, it's simply because its exotic ability requires you to pick up an orb of power. And so what's going to happen is exactly what you see me go through. I kill a few guys and realize, oh wait, I have no ways to produce orbs of power. Let me just put on a mod and switch my subclass, and yeah, that's going to be pretty darn annoying. So you either need to have a Void helmet to put on the mod that lets Void weapons make orbs, or be the Void subclass and then use this thing, right? So it limits what you can actually utilize within your build, because back in the day, any masterwork weapon at all would produce orbs of power. They were everywhere. But after the change requiring specific helmet mods to do that, orbs of power are just less commonly produced, and therefore this weapon is so much worse. However, moving on from there to the number 7 weapon on our list, that's going to be the Merciless exotic fusion rifle, coming in at 0.0114% usage. So, this fusion rifle is actually tailor-made for taking down big enemies in PvE. The exotic ability is if you hit an enemy and don't get a kill, it's going to increase the rate of fire. And it's going to do that again and again and again until eventually this thing is firing insanely fast for its high impact frame archetype. And honestly, the DPS you can achieve with the Merciless for a special weapon is really, really good. So the fact that you see it in this list is pretty depressing. Like, it's literally made for PvE and it's in the bottom 10 usage for PvE, right? What can Bungie do? Well, quite frankly, this is pretty good against big enemies. It just takes up so much ammo to do that DPS, and it's pretty trash the rest of the time. Often you're relying on your heavy weapon for the big boss DPS, and then your special weapon is your ad clearing duty. Stuff like the Forbearance grenade launcher, right? It's just insane. This thing is trash at clearing out ads. So that maybe meta shift is why we see the Merciless getting so little usage. However, it's time to move on from there to number 6 on our list, and that's going to be the Colony Exotic Grenade Launcher at 0.0112% usage. Now, this thing actually sees some pretty minor play in the Crucible because its exotic ability makes it so that its projectiles are little insectoid robots that seek after enemies. So you can just blind fire it around a corner in the general direction of enemies, and often those projectiles will seek out and get you a couple of free kills. Now, if the enemy team knows what they're doing, they're just going to jump and they'll survive. And in PvE, it just doesn't have a place. You don't need the seeking ability against, a Dreg. It's not going to duke you out that hard, right? But the damage also is severely lacking behind. Frankly, all grenade launchers are not in the best place right now PvE-wise, so giving up your exotic slot to one that does even less damage than usual is just not something people are going to do. However, moving on from there to the break-even point, number 5 on our list, it's the Sturm exotic hand cannon. So, this weapon actually gets unique benefits if you also use the Drang sidearm, a legendary sidearm that actually was reintroduced into the game very recently with Season of the Chosen. It's craftable, it can get some pretty good perks, incandescent, stuff like that. So, yeah, the fact that you still have the Sturm so low down when the weapon it's supposed to be used with is actually pretty good and craftable and available and recent, it's not a good sign. Essentially, as you get kills with the Drang, it's going to add a round into the Sturm, and once you go over the initial magazine, those rounds are going to do more damage. Now, that damage is actually pretty substantial, and yeah, you can get like a 100-round magazine with the Sturm, but that really does nothing other than make a cool screenshot, because at the end of the day, you're still being forced to use 2 primary weapons, which you just don't want to do. This weapon was developed in the era of double primaries when Destiny 2 first launched. It is just a relic of its former self. It needs to be redesigned to have any sort of place in the current meta. However, it's time to move on from there to number 4 on our list, and that's going to be the Darci Exotic Sniper Rifle with 0.0108% usage. Now this has the exotic perk where if you aim down sights on an enemy, eventually that enemy will start glowing red, and that's going to massively increase your precision damage against that enemy. But frankly, the biggest thing holding the Darci back is that it's a heavy weapon. For some inexplicable reason. Well, it's not inexplicable. Actually, it's the same reason as the Sturm. This was designed for an era when Destiny 2 first launched where you couldn't use special weapons in your first 2 slots, right? So this being a heavy sniper rifle, most other snipers were moved to the special slot. This wasn't for whatever reason, and Bungie really never gave it enough damage to warrant its place in the heavy slot. Like, it is out DPS'd by every linear fusion rifle in the game. And it also really doesn't help that sniper rifles just aren't super meta in PvE, so one of the advantages to the Darci would be using a really good legendary special sniper and then the Darci, and then your sniper rifle, finders, and scavengers would work for both. That would be great if snipers were good, but they're just kind of okay, so no one's using snipers. Definitely no one is using the Darci. Moving on from there, we then have at number 3, the Prospector Exotic Grenade Launcher at 0.0103%. Guys, I'm kind of sad this thing is so far down on the list because honestly, it's not a terrible grenade launcher. It's kind of the last remaining rapid fire frame in the game. There used to be more. They were absolutely slaying out. They were really good. So Bungie got rid of them basically entirely and reclassified the rapid fire frames as something else. And now nobody's using grenade launchers. Good job, Bungie. But aside from that, like, it actually puts out a reasonable amount of damage. But the problem is that it puts out its damage so fast that it's just not practical in terms of ammo. Like, you dump all your ammo on that singleton target, and the grenade launchers are not actually direct impact. Like, you'll see if I hit the ground, I have to wait for an enemy to run over it for it to blow up, which is not always great. If I shoot close enough to an enemy, it'll blow up, but I rather that they were just direct impact. And again, like, it does okay damage, but it's not touching a linear fusion rifle, right? So at the end of the day, even though the burst DPS is pretty good, if it's not literally the best, there's no reason to use this thing, especially with the current meta. However, guys, it's time to move on to the number 2 weapon on our list, and that's going to be the Queenbreaker Exotic Linear Fusion Rifle at 0.00845%. Now, this is a pretty unique linear fusion because it can actually swap between 2 different modes essentially by switching its sights. The combat scope is going to make this thing charge a lot faster, it's snappier, has better aim assist, and then the other scope makes it charge longer. It's going to do more damage, more meant for long range targets. So that's kind of cool. But being kind of cool is really the best part about this weapon. It just doesn't have a place in the game right now. No one is using their heavy exotic slot for this thing in the Crucible when, frankly, there's legendary linears that do just as good, especially the Storm Chaser can absolutely crank someone with its aggressive frame. And in PvE, you need stuff like firing line and triple tap. This thing comes nowhere close in the damage department, so there's just no reason to use this thing at all. It might even need a complete rework to actually give it any sort of viability. But guys, moving on from there, at number 1, the least used exotic weapon in the entire game for PvE, it's the Legend of Acreus with 0.0001%. Well, this is a bit misleading. If you go to the website, this is what you'll see, but there's actually an alternate version of the Legend of Acreus that you got during the initial quest for it. So like, 2 people in the game still have that version, and that's why it shows up here. The real version has a respectable 0.0582% usage, and that makes sense. Like, it got buffed this season. I'm sure a lot of you guys see people using the Legend. So we're obviously not counting that. The real last place exotic weapon is actually the Truth exotic rocket launcher at 0.00791%. That is insanely low. So why is the Truth at the very bottom of the list? Well, quite frankly, it's an exotic weapon that's really just a rocket launcher with good tracking. Like, the only other thing it has is grenades and horseshoes, so it will blow up, not necessarily requiring an impact. If you shoot it beside someone as it flies by, it will blow up and secure the kill, which is pretty good. But there's also the Galahorn, and when it came out, it actually had grenades and horseshoes, which was so good for PvP and Gambit. Bungie had to nerf it, actually making it better in PvE, because now we get direct impact damage, but that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, you're really not going to give up your exotic slot for a rocket launcher with better than normal tracking, right? Again, in PvP, it has some very minute use cases. Interestingly though, it gets 3 rounds in a magazine, which is actually insane for rocket launchers, but that's more of a PvE like burst damage thing. But then again, it's like good tracking doesn't really matter that much in PvE, that's more of a PvP thing. Like, this weapon doesn't know what it wants to be. There's legendary rocket launchers that can outperform this thing, and again, if you want to secure a kill with a rocket launcher in PvP, use the Galahorn. Even though it requires an impact now instead of grenades and horseshoes, I mean, the Seeking Wolfpack rounds are so much better than anything the Truth can do. So that's why you just see it. There's no reason to use it. Guys, that is it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.